The newsroom buzzed with urgency, screens flickering with headlines that refused to sit still. Producers rushed past each other, clutching scripts filled with breaking updates, royal shockers, TV bombshells, and whispers of scandal that seemed to ripple through the industry like electricity. But among the noise, one story quietly demanded attention, its weight heavier than the flashing banners suggested. At the center of it all were two familiar names, Eamonn Holmes and Ruth Langsford. For decades, they had been more than just presenters. They were a partnership, on screen and off. Audiences had welcomed them into their homes every morning on This Morning, where their chemistry felt effortless, almost comforting. Their laughter, their occasional disagreements, their shared glances, it all painted a picture of something steady in an unpredictable world. But now, that picture had begun to crack. It started as a whisper in the financial columns, easily overshadowed by louder celebrity drama. A company name, Holmes and Away, surfaced in reports, tied to numbers that didn't quite add up. 6 figures. Debts. Creditors. Words that sounded clinical, detached. But behind them was a story far more human. Late one evening, long after the studio lights had dimmed, Eamonn sat alone at his desk. Papers were spread before him, statements, reports, signatures. Numbers stared back at him, unforgiving. £251,029. A figure that carried more than just financial weight, it carried memories. He could almost hear Ruth's voice in the room, light but firm, as it had been during their years together. "We built this, you know," she would have said, perhaps with a half-smile. And she would have been right. Holmes and Away wasn't just a business. It had once been a symbol of their unity, a venture born in 2009 when everything seemed aligned. Back then, success came easily. Opportunities flowed, brand deals stacked up, and their presence on television was undeniable. The company thrived, reaching heights few could have predicted. There had been a time, not so long ago, when the numbers told a different story. Assets rising to hundreds of thousands, peaking at over £600,000. Those were the golden years, when the future felt secure, almost guaranteed. But time, as it often does, shifted things. By 2024, their personal lives had quietly taken a different path. The announcement of their separation came as a shock to many, though those close to them sensed the distance growing long before it became public. They handled it with dignity, choosing privacy over spectacle. Still, the change was undeniable. And with that change came consequences that extended beyond their personal lives. The business they had built together began to falter. Without the same shared momentum, without the daily collaboration that once fueled it, Holmes and Away slowly lost its footing. Projects stalled. Income streams thinned. And the debts, once manageable, began to grow. Back in the newsroom, the story was gaining traction. 6-figure debt, one producer muttered, scanning the report. Second year in the red. Another shook their head. It's not just numbers. It's the end of something. They were right. According to filings, the company had ceased trading. Plans were already in motion to dissolve it. A formal ending to what had once been a thriving chapter of two intertwined careers. But outside the headlines, life moved on. Eamonn continued to carve his path, his voice still familiar to viewers tuning into GB News. There, he maintained his presence, sharp, opinionated, unmistakably himself. Yet, those who watched closely noticed subtle changes. A pause where there once wasn't one. A quieter tone beneath the confidence. Ruth, on the other hand, found her rhythm elsewhere. On Loose Women, she brought the same warmth and wit audiences had always loved. Surrounded by a panel of voices, she seemed steady, grounded in a new chapter, yet undeniably shaped by the old one. Despite their separate paths, the echoes of their shared past lingered. There were moments, rare, fleeting, when memories surfaced publicly. A clip replayed, a joke referenced, a photograph resurfacing from an awards night years ago. Each one a reminder of what once was. And perhaps that's what made the story resonate. Because beneath the financial figures and business filings, it wasn't really about debt. It was about change. About how even the strongest partnerships can evolve, sometimes in ways no one anticipates. Back at his desk, Eamonn signed the final page of the document. The pen paused for a second longer than necessary. It was just a signature, after all. A routine act. And yet, it felt like closing a door. Across the city, Ruth sat in a softly lit studio, preparing for another segment. The conversation around her buzzed, topics, opinions, laughter, but for a brief moment she seemed elsewhere. Reflective, perhaps. Thoughtful. Then, as always, she smiled. Because that's what they both did best. They carried on. The headlines would continue, of course. New stories would emerge. Fresh scandals, unexpected announcements, the endless cycle of celebrity news. The newsroom would remain as frantic as ever, chasing the next big thing. But for those who had watched Eamonn and Ruth over the years, this story felt different. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet, personal, real. A reminder that behind every headline, every number, every six-figure debt, there are lives shifting, chapters ending, and new ones, uncertain, uncharted, just beginning.